Welcome to the Injury Lawyer Podcast, a podcast that discusses all types of injuries caused by all types of negligence. Join attorney Steve Heisler, the injury lawyer, and other experts as they provide valuable insight into your legal rights and help keep you informed. Now your host, Steve Heisler.
Welcome to the Injury Lawyer Podcast. I'm Steve Heisler, your host and senior attorney of the law offices of Steven H. Heisler. I also go by the Injury Lawyer, so that's why we call it the Injury Lawyer Podcast. I've been practicing injury law for 34 years. I'm based in Maryland, but we handle cases nationwide through working with co-counsel in the state that we might end up practicing or handling a case in. I'm glad you're listening or watching this. I'm really excited about having you listen to or watch the podcast. Hope all is good. Hope you're well. The purpose of this podcast is to talk about all types of injuries that are due to all types of negligence. And that could range anywhere from an amputation from an auto accident case to a brain injury due to a birth injury, which is actually what we're going to be talking about today. So the topic for today's podcast is placental abruption. Do I have a medical malpractice case? So you're probably saying, Steve, what is a placental abruption? Oh, and before I get into today's topic, I do want to introduce you to my concierge producer, Russ. Russ, you want to just get on and just say hello?
You're going to bring me in the show right after you mentioned placental abruption.
Well, look, I'm just glad that I remember to get you on at all. Yeah, so I'm thinking by like episode 10, this will be like the Joe Rogan show.
Okay.
We'll have like millions of viewers and listeners.
May the show be as successful.
I'm hoping. But, I have to introduce you because we've been working together. We had another podcast and, we never saw each other because it was an audio only podcast. So I am just really just happy to be able to actually, talk to you, see you as I'm talking to you, but I'm also want to talk to you and have all our listeners meet you because I found you to be just a real intriguing guy from Florida. Yeah, whose sons play baseball.
Oh yeah, big baseball family.
Yeah, so and I'm not gonna take the detour and start talking about baseball because we could do a baseball podcast, but so you're also kind of like my security blanket. I feel like I've got you near me. You're like a teddy bear. So I can kind of so in case, if we run off the rails, just let me know.
I think we're running off the rails now by bringing me into the show again, right after we mentioned.
Hey, no rules.
Placental
the Injury Lawyer Podcast is no rules. All right. So
placental abruption is what we're going to be talking about, what you're going to be talking about today.
What I'm going to be talking about, and it's actually a pretty serious thing. Right. A placental abruption it's actually an uncommon condition that causes serious bleeding during pregnancy. And the placenta attaches to the wall of the uterus, the womb, and supplies the baby with food and oxygen through the umbilical cord. Now, I'd never heard of placental abruption before I became an attorney. And actually, it wasn't until that I started really doing medical malpractice cases and birth injury cases that I actually learned about placental abruption. So it's a severe condition, if God forbid it occurs, where the placenta actually detaches from the uterus or the wall of the uterus before birth. Now, it can be a partial or a complete separation. And the thing about the partial separation is that it's not considered to be very dangerous if it's a partial separation. And look at me, you probably heard my cell phone in the background. So
I heard a little buzz, but it wasn't too distracting.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ. Well, that's me who, I sleep with that thing on my hip. So, but from this episode moving forward, I'm definitely going to make sure that that's turned off. So, again, I'm 62, so it's always like an adventure just trying to navigate my cell phone. But anyway, so let me get back. So if the placenta separates from the wall of the uterus before birth, again, if it's a partial separation, it's not considered as dangerous. It's definitely something to be monitored. But if it's complete separation, if it's a complete detachment, then your baby might be deprived of oxygen and nutrients that baby, your child, needs in the womb. Now, this can also cause the mother, the female, who is carrying the baby, to have pain and serious bleeding. And I'm going to talk about in a minute about what you need to look for, or what your doctor needs to look for to prevent a placental abruption, or if there seems like there could be a placental abruption, what they need to do. And if they don't do it, then yes, you could have a case of medical malpractice. So only about 1% of pregnancies involve a placental abruption. It's very uncommon. And it can occur anytime after 20 weeks of pregnancy, but usually occurs in the third trimester. As I said, a mild abruption, is not considered dangerous. But as I said, if it leads to a complete separation, then it puts the mother and the baby at great risk. So if you have a placental abruption, your infant is at greater risk for a myriad of things. One are growth problems, preterm birth, stillbirth. If you can also have a situation where there is a delay in delivery, causing brain damage, cerebral palsy, and can lead to and intellectual disability as well. So a placental abruption can also result in life-threatening consequences and death for the mother. It's unfortunate, but it's very possible. It's severe bleeding, and severe bleeding can lead to hemorrhaging and a lot of bad things. So that's something that you really need to understand. So how do you know if a baby's or a mother's injury or death from placental abruption is medical malpractice, or as we say in legal terms, a deviation from the standard of care? So signs and symptoms that indicate that a placental abruption is occurring include vaginal bleeding, severe abdominal pain, irregular fetal heartbeat, back pain, stomach tenderness. Now, obviously, if you have those symptoms, you would be calling your OBGYN. You might go to urgent care. I would probably recommend going to the hospital, since if you're pregnant and you're having these symptoms, you're probably going to want to have someone who has experience in delivering babies to take a look at it. And if you go to a hospital, if you can't see your OBGYN, or your OBGYN just tells you to go to the hospital, but if you go to the hospital, they're going to hopefully get somebody who's able to help you out and have the expertise. So you need to know that your doctor has a responsibility to monitor you, or a female who's at risk for fetal abruption, and to take action in a timely manner to alleviate any possible complications that could be occurring to your pregnancy. Women at higher risk for placental abruption include older than 35 females or younger than 20 years old. Smokers. And by the way, my wife just quit smoking, so smoking is not a good thing. And we're going to do an episode probably later on making claims against the tobacco industry for cancers that come from prolonged smoking. But if you're a smoker, you also place yourself at higher risk for placental abruption. High blood pressure. So high blood pressure is probably one of the most dangerous traits you can have that can cause placental abruption. Hypertension is probably the leading cause of placental abruption. So keep that in mind. Immune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, blood vessel and tendon diseases, and uterine decompression all are examples of different conditions that a pregnant female has or could have that would make them more susceptible to getting placental abruption. Okay, so instances of medical malpractice. So, if you want to know, and the reason you came onto this podcast is either yourself or someone in your family or someone you love or like or a friend had placental abruption, could have led to an injury to the mother or to the baby, could have led to death, God forbid. And so you want to know a little bit about what steps can you take. But, I explained to you what placental abruption was and, what some of the signs of a placental abruption are and who's more susceptible to it than others. And also what different conditions could actually complicate or accelerate or cause placental abruption to happen. So now you might say, okay, well, now you give me that information, Steve. Well, what particularly do I need to know as far as what the doctor did do or should have done that might have either prevented the placental abruption from happening or from causing a birth injury to my child or an injury to me or to the mother as a result of failing to recognize the placental abruption in time or to take timely action and proper action. So one is, in the beginning, the failure to inform the mother of the risks or other, and other options for placental abruption. So if you're going to an OBGYN and you've got some of those conditions that we talked about, high blood pressure, lupus, what we discussed, the doctor has to tell you, hey, you're at risk for placental abruption. And if the doctor didn't, and because of you didn't have the knowledge and you didn't have the information that you needed to take the action that you yourself needed to take to help prevent it, you could have a cause of action. You could have a medical malpractice case against the doctor. Failure to test and evaluate risk factors, signs, symptoms, and causes of placental abruption in a pregnant female. So you come in and you have maybe some of those risk factors that we talked about. If the doctor doesn't put you through a battery of tests to determine what your risk is for placental abruption, that also could be something that you could talk to an attorney about as far as whether or not that doctor deviated from the standard of care and caused or because of that deviation from the standard of care, not taking those tests and not looking into it further, that caused the mother to have a placental abruption. Another one, someone comes in with vaginal bleeding, with the abdominal pain, with back pain, and when I say comes into the hospital, and the hospital fails to take immediate action and perform an emergency C-section in a timely manner. So whenever someone comes in fetal distress, and they should be taking, obviously looking at the fetal monitor strips. They also should be taking into consideration all the different symptoms that you're having, and they should come to the conclusion. And if it turns out that they should have come to the conclusion that an emergency C-section should have been done, then you could also make a claim against that doctor or the hospital for failure to perform that emergency C-section. The other thing to talk about is a failure of the doctor or the hospital to treat the placental abruption with IV fluids and blood transfusions in a timely and proper fashion. And again, if you have any of these types of situations happening to you, you need to get on the phone and talk to an attorney, because the attorney will be able to investigate, speak with an expert, and see if the expert believes that there is a potential medical malpractice situation. So you should know that in a medical malpractice case, it's not like a personal injury case where like an auto accident or a slip and fall case. In a medical malpractice case, expert testimony is very, very crucial to your case. In order to even be able to get your case in court, you need to go out, or your attorney needs to go out and get an expert in obstetrics, or if it's an emergency room negligence where they didn't do a C-section, then a hospitalist, but somebody, an expert, a doctor who has an expertise in birth injuries. And you would have, that doctor would have to give you an opinion. In Maryland, it's called a certificate of merit. It's, I believe, called a certificate of merit in most other states, but it's a document that the court requires for you to even be able to file your lawsuit. So that's important. And there are statute of limitations. You need to know that. Every state's different. Maryland's 3 years, but I do work in a lot of other states. I can tell you that in California, it's 1 year. You have a 1 year statute of limitations. Now, there is an exception to that, which you could talk to a California attorney about. But we do cases in California, and we have that come up on a frequent basis. In most other states, it's 2 years. So if you believe that there was medical malpractice and a placental abruption that caused your baby a birth injury or caused you a significant, severe, catastrophic injury, you need to talk to an attorney really, really fast. Because it's not as if you talk to the attorney and the attorney can file the lawsuit the next day. The lawyer actually, has to get records. So we have to get records. We have to review the records, and we have to send the records to the expert. The expert has to review them. So it can take months before we can even make a decision as to whether or not you have a viable claim. Okay. So those are things that are really important. So I would advise you, if you think you have a claim, you can to talk to an attorney. And of course, you can talk to me at any time. You can go to and I'll give you my website information and cell phone number when we're done. But anyway, I do want to also tell you, so you're like, okay, Steve, well, all right, you're telling me that there might be a medical malpractice claim for breaching the standard of care, causing a placental abruption, which caused a birth injury or an injury to an individual, to the mother. But are there actually court cases where the courts or juries have actually come back and found in favor of the injured baby or the injured mother? Yes. And I'm going to give you one case. So recently, an Illinois jury awarded a significant amount of money to a lady who was 40 weeks pregnant. She presented to the emergency room with complaints of abdominal pain, cramping, bleeding, all the things we talked about earlier. The hospital staff failed to call for a doctor to perform an emergency C-section. And we talked about that as well. That's one of the failures of a medical professional that could be actionable. That's a valid breach. I mean, it's a valid cause of action because that's what you're supposed to do. You get that baby out of there when the mother's in distress and the fetal strip shows that the baby's in distress. Unfortunately, the baby was born with cerebral palsy. Actually, it was mild cerebral palsy, but that's not good. And that resulted in speech disabilities, developmental delays. So a really, really just horrible situation that at least the mother got some justice against the hospital. More importantly, the damages that were awarded can help the mother, the family, provide for the disabled child, because with mild cerebral palsy, that requires a lot of money for schooling, for 24/7, a lot of times 24/7 attendant cost of having to actually have an attendant that there to help the child with CP. So again, the money is used again to really just make sure that they're able to pay for all the exorbitant costs that they're going to have happen to them as a result of having a disabled child born. Okay, so hopefully this will never happen to a family member or to you or to anyone. If you're listening to this or watching this podcast and you're on here and you have had a child that has a birth injury because of placental abruption, please accept my deepest sympathies and hoping that things will go better or look better in the future. So as I said, if you think you have a medical malpractice case for a placental abruption, feel free to talk to an attorney. You can call me at any time at 443-854-2471. You can leave me a message. If I don't answer, you'll probably hear a rambling voicemail telling you to just leave a message and I'll get back to you. You can text me at that number, or you could send me an email at sheisler@injurylawyer, M as in Mary, D as in dog.com. So sheisler@injurylawyer.md.com. Well, thanks for watching or listening. I hope that at least what I had to say today was of some value to you. I am really looking forward to sharing more episodes with you and having you come back and listen and get more information or education about any type of injury that is the result of any type of negligence. So this is Steve Heisler, the injury lawyer. I look forward to talking to you or seeing you soon. You have yourself a great day. All right, take care. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Injury Lawyer Podcast. Connect with us at theinjurylawyerpodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to follow, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. To find out more or get help anytime, visit theinjurylawyermd.com or call 855-396-2637. That's 855-396-2637.